Hi, everybody. Welcome to an extended orientation for the Honor Code and the Honor Commission. My name is Matthew Feldstein, and I'm one of the two co-chairs of the Honor Commission for the academic year of 2020 to 2021.
My name is Matt Simmers, and I am the second co-chair for this academic year.
And my name is Blake Gill, and I'm the secretary of the Honor Commission.
So the process here today is that we're going to be describing the purpose of the Honor Code here at Gettysburg College and what it means to follow the Honor Code as a Gettysburg student here. We're going to be describing the process of what happens if, unfortunately or hypothetically, you do violate the Honor Code at Gettysburg College, or you find yourself suspected of an Honor Code violation. And after that, we're going to open it up to questions that any of you may have about the process or maybe about joining the Honor Commission. And really the main point of the discussion here today is that you guys have a good understanding of what the Honor Code is, and you have a clear and open understanding of the process so that we can keep things as transparent as possible.
So a bit of history about the Honor Code first. So the Honor Code is an integral part of Gettysburg College and has been since the 1950s, though it has greatly evolved since then because originally anyone who was caught cheating was automatically expelled, but we don't take that hard line anymore. Now it's when the students hear about the Honor Code, the first thought that they have is that professors either aren't in the room when they're taking quizzes or tests, or that professors want them to write the honor pledge on assignments when they turn it in. The Honor Code represents a system of trust that the faculty has in the students, where the students are expected to be completely honest, truthful, and complete assignments to the best of theirs and their own ability, while students cannot expect the faculty to give them the space they need to complete these assignments without being overbearing and not breathing down their neck during quizzes and exams.
Because of this system of trust, there are penalties that are incurred when students violate the tenets of the Honor Code. Don't worry, the penalties are not nearly as extreme as getting expelled at the first sight of cheating. They now can range from a reduced grade on the assignment to a failure or a 0 on the assignment to a reduced letter grade for the final grade to failing the course. Now, those are all the first violation penalties, and we will go into distinctions later. Second violation penalties are inherently more severe because that means you have come before us and have proven to have violated the Honor Code twice. So that means suspension and expulsion are on the table. But these decisions are not taken lightly at all, which will be explained later in the process and talk.
So we on the Honor Commission and as a body at large really focus on the tenet of restorative justice. The whole idea is that if you happen to come in front of us, we're not here just to essentially find out whether or not if you cheated and then give you a punishment. That's not the process at all. And we're going to discuss more about that later. But what we really like to do is we try to understand why you may have violated the Honor Code if you did, and try to help teach you the skills that you can use in the future to help avoid you violating it. Because we do see a lot of times where students may have violated the Honor Code inadvertently or because they just didn't have the skills necessary to avoid an unfortunate string of events that led them to violating the Honor Code. So to more on a bit about that, so as my co-chair Matt Simmers mentioned previously, the values of the Honor Code at Gettysburg College are incredibly important. It's about building that relationship between yourself and the faculty that show how you can work together in a body without that system in high school where teachers might be pacing around the room while you're taking an exam. We place at this college inherent trust in students that are here that you will be able to do the work without plagiarizing, without cheating, and without someone having to watch you 24/7 and make sure you're doing that. And to help you do that, some skills that we highly recommend and things that you can do to help avoid an Honor Code violation is you need to work on your time management. That's definitely one of the biggest things we see, where students just possibly procrastinate or don't plan well enough to the point where they have this big paper or assignment that's due the next day, and they've done very minimal effort on it. And all of a sudden, it's a lot easier, more appealing to them to maybe look up a paper online that sort of follows that topic and try to submit that paper on as their own, or take huge sections of their paper where they wrote parts of it, but also copied and pasted whole paragraphs from another source. You might feel pressured that you really need to get a good grade in this class, and rather than talk to your professor about maybe an extension or maybe something else you can do to make up points, you'd rather try to cheat your way out of the system to make sure you still pass if it is a required course at this college and you really care how you do. This is something we see a lot of time in foreign language classes, where you are required to take 2 foreign language classes here at Gettysburg College over the course of 2 semesters to graduate. And students many times use translators rather than trying to use the allowed resources, and they use translators such as Google Translate that, to be frank, aren't very good translators, and that a Spanish professor here at Gettysburg College can immediately pick out as using a translator, and that is what has you come in front of us, where we unfortunately then have to go through the process of trying to resolve that issue. So those are some primary examples, and I'd be happy to go into them more later if anybody has any other questions.
So as Matt previously said, most of the cases that come before us can typically be split between 4 different categories. Those 4 categories are the use of unauthorized resources, cheating, the lack of citations, and submitting other students' work as your own. So unauthorized use of resources typically covers plagiarism, the use of translators in a language class, as Matt touched on, using extra materials like an online problem solver for math or hard science courses. Cheating is more straightforward. So this is when you get your stereotypical just looking at another student's paper or exam and just copying that work and turning it in. Lack of citations is also fairly self-explanatory and is also often tied to plagiarism, where you just improperly cite, you don't cite at all. And submitting another student's work as your own is a step up from cheating, because this means you have specifically taken another student's work either from a current year or years past, and then switched the names and dates around and submitted it as your own. And this is typically seen with essays or take-home exams that professors just use and roll over. And one thing that Matt didn't touch on initially with ways you can, especially during exams, that you can avoid violating the honor code is if there's a question that you do not understand, you can always come back to it later and see if something else on the exam just helps clear the problem up for you, or you can just leave it blank, because in most cases the problem is not worth a large amount of points, and it's far better to leave it blank than to end up cheating in some respect and then coming before us.
So typically these are how all of the cases form, all of the aforementioned kind of ways that our co-chairs had mentioned. And as secretary, when these cases come to us and we complete them in hearing boards and stuff like that, as secretary, I'm the one who takes all the completed cases and inputs them into an Excel file, so we have reference for them in case a student comes before us again. It is always startling to me that there are always so many cases each semester for students who cheated on a minor assignment, when in reality it means maybe a percentage of the overall grade in comparison to something like an exam or a big project in the class. And we often tell students who have come before us that there's always many options for them in dealing with these cases to essentially not get this honor code violation. Whether it is leaving the problem blank on an exam, handing in an assignment late or not at all, depending on the worth, or emailing the professor, as our coaches have mentioned, just for asking for an extension. Professors at Gettysburg College are very understanding as long as you don't email them Sunday night for an extension or any just kind of last minute asking for an extension. As long as you're proactive and looking for areas where you can better yourself and you kind of maintain that inherent trust that our professors give to us, it never really hurts to ask and reach out to them. They're usually very understanding.
I want to definitely echo the sentiments expressed by both Matt and Blake so far about it is always worth it in the long run, that if you don't feel like you can answer a question on an exam or do an assignment with your own work and your own ideas, it is always better to take a 0 on the assignment, as much as that may pain some people to hear, rather than go out of your way to try to violate the honor code, because the penalties for violating the honor code will almost always be worse than just taking a 0 on the assignment. And moving on into that as a nice segue, now we're going to be talking about what the process is if you do hypothetically violate the honor code. We're going to first talk about first violations and then move on to second violations. So a first violation, if you are suspected of violating the honor code, all first violations are handled in the same way. If depending on who reports the honor code violation, whether it's a professor, another student in the class, or even a self-report, because as we all know in the Gettysburg College Honor Code, you are meant to self-report yourself if you do happen to violate the honor code. Then we reach out and we set up a meeting between the student in question, the professor of the class where an honor code violation may have been committed, one of the deans of academic advising, and then of course one of the 2 honor commission co-chairs. So in this case, for right now, that would be either myself or Matt. what we'd set up is a preliminary conference. And that conference is set up so that we can help kind of resolve the issue and try to come to a better understanding of what happened and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, so going more in depth into the topic of the conference. So during the conversation we discuss all the materials that were compiled beforehand to find whatever the truth was in the scenario. So whether there was a violation in the honor code or whether there wasn't. So we can never stress enough that the truth is the best policy in this, because when we find out that if you weren't truthful, then the penalty is inherently going to be worse, because you were given several options both before the conference and during the conference to be able to come forward and just be truthful. And every case we have is judged based on its own merits. It doesn't matter if we've had a professor before or if we've had 10 similar cases within the same semester. We work with each student individually to help them. And this goes back to what Matt was talking about earlier with restorative justice. And we talked about penalties earlier, but just to recap, the first violation cases can have grade penalties from a reduced assignment grade to failure in the course. If something is not decided at a conference, be it a violation or penalty, which requires a 4 out of 4 agreement from everyone in the conference, then a case goes to a hearing board. So a hearing board is a panel of 6 students in the honor commission, a co-chair, a dean of academic advising, and an academic advisor. And that academic advisor is typically a faculty member who works closely with academic advising and is often able to input their opinion and help guide us with questions. They would then hear both sides and review the evidence. So this isn't as much of a conversation as the conference. This is the professor would go into the room first, and they would be asked questions by the student members of the board. And then whomever violated the honor code goes in next, and then we ask them the questions. So this is definitely not as, there's no significant conversation that can help the professor and the student reconcile the trust that was lost in the initial breaking of the honor code, which is one of the things we really try to emphasize in the conference. And another requirement for first violation cases that we have is that we have them write a reflection letter and send it to academic advising to help the student work through what they learned and discuss what they could change in the future so they don't come before us again. And one thing I did not mention is that the hearing board does not take into account doesn't need to be a consensus between the faculty member who brought forth the honor code violation or the course and then the student. It's merely a vote between the 6 members. So there isn't that, like, once it goes to a hearing board, whoever violated the honor code doesn't have that chance to have input in what they think the penalty should be and whether there was a violation or not.
And Matt did a great job right there, just kind of explaining what a first violation looks like. But then it is possible as well for a student to come to us with having a second violation from either the same class or a different class, whatever the situation may be. If a student is found in violation the first time, their name is actually kept on record in academic advising for 5 years after the fact. Though those not in violation have their name wiped, and if they come before us again, it is a clean slate. We don't consider that before, because if you were honest or you didn't break the honor code the first time, there wouldn't be a record of that. You would come to us with a clean slate. But if there wasn't a clean slate, you were found in violation the last time, as soon as you have the second violation or a new case, you don't have the conference or anything Matt just described. You'll go right into the hearing board process, which is very similar to the first violation. And we'll just go straight to the board with the 6 members, the dean of academic advising, if you want an advisor or something for the case like that as well. And just pretty much with the severity of the second violation, they're typically inherently worse as far as penalties. Now we could start considering suspension, even expulsion or something like that. Suspension can vary for 1 or 2 semesters. Depending on what you did, if you were honest with us throughout the whole process, if you came clean, if you recognized or learned anything from your first case going into your second case, and just kind of what we're looking for as far as restorative justice that we've mentioned again, just to see all the different things that are possible. If we still find you essentially being somebody who is willing to uphold the standards of this great community.
I want to thank Matt and Blake for everything they've said so far. I couldn't agree more. Just to give a once more brief overview, because that was a lot of information very quickly, just a nice little summary. Like I said, hypothetically, if you do happen to violate the honor code and it is a first violation, you'd go to something called the preliminary conference between yourself, the professor of that class, an honor commission co-chair, and a dean of academic advising. An important thing, like we noted, is that everybody in that conference has to agree about what happened. We may all leave that conference agreeing that an honor code violation didn't occur, or we may all leave that conference agreeing that an honor code violation did occur. If we agree that nothing happened, there's no record, you're good to go. You didn't do anything wrong. That's exactly what we want to see, and you can go on with your day. If we agree something did happen, that's when, unfortunately, we'd have to discuss a penalty like we mentioned. It's when we don't come to an agreement in those preliminary conferences is what leads us to having to go to a hearing board for a first violation case. And that's obviously a much more serious occasion due to the amount of people involved. And at that point, consensus is not needed between the group. It would just be those 6 honor commission members voting about whether or not they believe an honor commission violation occurred or an honor code violation occurred. And then they would also decide on what the penalty is if they find you in violation. And like Blake so eloquently mentioned, for a second violation case, for just the suspected second violation case, the policy as of right now in the honor code is that you would automatically start that hearing board process. There would be no preliminary conference. There'd be no way to kind of stop the buck there. We'd have to address it in that hearing board environment, because the fact that you've already violated it once and now you're in front of us again means that you have betrayed the trust of the community possibly multiple times, and that can lead to a much more serious penalty. And as always, honesty, honesty, honesty is the best policy. The more truthful you are with us, the better it will be for you in the long run. I cannot tell you how many times that students have come forward to us and they've decided that lying got them into this mess, but maybe lying can get them out of it. And unfortunately, that is not the case. More likely than not, those students suffered much harsher penalties because of the lying, rather had they been truthful with us. So at this time, I just want to do a quick plug-in. If anyone's interested in applying for the Honor Commission, we'd love to have you. We're always accepting new members. There's no deadline to the application process. You can submit your application at any point. You'd submit that to the academic advising office, or you can even feel free to send an email with your application to myself, Matt, or Blake, or anyone in the Honor Commission, and they can definitely forward it to the correct people. And to find the application, it's a very simple process. You go on the Gettysburg College website, you just look up Honor Commission application in the search bar, and one of the top few links should have a PDF document with the application, which you'd fill out electronically, and then you can send it to the right people or print it out and hand it in directly. So at this time, I'd like to open up to the audience if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask. All right. I see that I have one question coming in the chat box. So one student's asking what they should do if their professor does not have, say, an honor code policy written in their syllabus. That's a great question. So an important thing to note at Gettysburg College is it doesn't matter whether or not you might write the honor pledge on your assignment, or if your professor doesn't mention the honor code. It's in effect for everything you do here in terms of your academic assignments. So whether or not you write HC at the end of your paper, or you write it down, or whether or not your professor acknowledges it in class, if you plagiarize, if you cheat, that is still an honor code violation, whether you knew about it or not. I'm seeing another question. Matt, maybe you can take this one. The student's asking about what they should do in the event that they're working with another partner on an assignment. It's just the normal homework and they're working together. They're not using any other resources, but whether or not that's allowed in the class.
That fully depends on what the professor says in the syllabus or what the professor says in class. So there could be a professor who says, like I know with like higher level math classes or even lower level math classes or stuff like that, professors will often say, oh, great, work with your classmates, just like bounce ideas off each other, just make sure it's your own work. There are also some professors who say, no, you have to do all the work by yourself. And I can't stress enough how important it is that you have to listen to the professors, that even if you don't use like online resources or a textbook, whatever the professors explicitly prohibit, that even if you work with someone else and they say you can't, then that still is a violation of the honor code. And I do want to touch on one thing Matt said earlier when he was talking about how important honesty is. It doesn't matter if when you initially are told by your professor that they're bringing you in front of the honor commission, that if you say, oh, I didn't do anything, it doesn't matter if until the middle of the conference, then you finally say, I did something, we will take that into account. And it doesn't matter how late it is. We just want that honesty because we want to be able to repair that trust between you and your professor. So don't think just because you said you didn't do it initially before the conference that you already dug yourself into a hole you can't come out of. Like, we welcome as much honesty as possible.
Yeah, I couldn't concur more. I do have another question regarding maybe the more specifics of a second violation case, about hypothetically how that process would go. So that's actually a really great point, and I actually should have mentioned this previously. But in the event you do commit or are suspected of committing a second violation, while you do automatically have to go to a hearing board, you don't just start at a hearing board. We would still have a type of conference like the preliminary conference we'd have in a first honor code violation, but that comes greater discussion and to kind of collect all the facts about the case and all the relevant materials, because at that point in time, it is much more likely that we will have that conference much sooner than you would have that board. And we'd like to make sure we have all the information possible to come to a fair and just decision, because due to the large amount of individuals that have to be present for a hearing board, it can sometimes be difficult to get everybody together for this at the same time. So there might be a delay. We want to make sure that we're not forgetting anything important. So that's an excellent question. Does anyone have any other questions they'd like to ask at this time? Okay, seeing none, I want to thank you all for coming here today, or for those maybe watching this in the future, I want to thank you for watching this. Like I said, if you'd like to apply, we're always accepting new members. We love having new interested members of the Gettysburg community. Whether you're a first year or even a senior, everybody's welcome to apply. This is your honor code, this is your community, and if you want to make a difference or you feel that there's things that need to be changing, we'd love to hear your voice, and we'd love to see you apply for the future semesters. Like I said, thank you for your time today. I want to thank Matt Simmers and Blake Gill for being here. I couldn't ask for a better co-chair and a better secretary for this semester. And as always, I hope that everybody has a great semester. I hope everybody's staying safe. Whether if you're an at-home student right now or remotely, I hope you and your family are safe. If you're on campus, I hope you are safe. I hope your roommates are safe. And I hope everybody's following all the rules that they're meant to be doing. And as always, I wish you a successful semester here at Gettysburg College and a successful rest of your college career, whether this is your first semester or this is your last.
Thank you for coming, guys. And as we can't stress enough, as both Blake and Matt have both emphasized quite a bit during this talk, honesty is extremely important. And as corny as it sounds sometimes, and trust me, we've all been there, it does sound very corny. Please take it seriously, because we don't like seeing you guys in front of us. We want everyone to be as completely truthful and honest as possible. And it pains us when we see you guys in front of us.
And also thank you for everybody for coming today and asking all those wonderful questions. If you still have anything else you'd like to add, or you think of something after the fact, or even just have a general question about the Honor Code, the Honor Commission, kind of what we do, a professor, course, or anything in relation to us, the Honor Code, the Honor Commission, please reach out to us. I know myself and both Matt's our co-chairs. We have 4 years each of experience being here. We've been here since our freshman year, essentially. And we're very knowledgeable, and we're always here to help if you have any questions. So please feel free to reach out to us, or if you see us on campus, just let us know. And thank you for coming.